Yo, 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 everybody. Gabriel Flores in the house again, aka Maybe Lee. Um, I am doing a series, as you guys know, that is looking at my life in various times in my life and comparing that with the stars, with the world, what I see in front of me, what I see on the television, what I see in my local community, and comparing all of that with my stuff, with where I've been, things I've actually done, and stuff like that. And I'm hoping that it enriches my life a little bit more by doing that. This is all on the fly type stuff. I didn't rehearse any of this, and so it's kind of like a personal diary, but also kind of like a problem solving mechanism that I'm using. So I hope there's something gatherable from it for the audience out there on YouTube. But if a lot of it doesn't make sense, or you're trying to figure out what is he talking about, what I'm talking about is I'm just trying to figure out my life using the tools that I have in front of me to do that. And I'm really adamant about that. This is something that I'm passionate about. I've been doing it for a while, and I can plan on continue doing it for as long as I can. I want to look into my military career, or at least discuss some certain things about my military career, and then also go over who's the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And those are the main things I'm going to talk about today, right now. So in-depth look into my military career is pretty interesting. An in-depth look into my military career requires a timeline, a review of official military documents, and delineating training versus real life operations. So from my perspective, to look in depth, from what I said, is to be able to look in depth into my military career requires those three things. If you don't do those three things, then you don't have an in-depth look into my military career. It's just a look at my military career. But if you want to do an in-depth look, something that's substantial, you really need a timeline. You need a review of official military documents. So let's review why I said these things. A timeline, well, of course, in-depth look, well, let's get a timeline of what the military career looks like. It doesn't matter if there's points in there. What matters is, being able to, let's define the time period. Let's look at the time period, not just say military career, as opposed to from 2020 something to 20 whatever. Boom, now you're going to have a better perspective on my military career. So in my eyes, it's not necessarily, the timeline doesn't mean the more dots you have in that timeline, the better. But having a timeline is giving you an in-depth look at the military career. So in my eyes, doing more things doesn't hinge on what I'm doing here, because I'm just trying to get an in-depth look. I'm not trying to say my military career is better. But even if I was saying my military career was better, having more dots in that timeline doesn't substantiate better. Just as a side note. But for this in-depth look, timeline, that's why I said timeline. Let's get for a personal review. Because even for myself, I can just say, yeah, I was in the U.S. Navy. But that's not an in-depth look, because the U.S. Navy is everywhere on the news. I have a U.S. Navy hat or something like that, or just basic information that pops up from U.S. Navy, from just saying that statement. And so even for myself, if I want to look at my career in depth, I even have to say to myself, well, I was in the U.S. Navy from 2004 to 2012. And so that's a start to beginning an in-depth look at my military career. The second thing I put on there was a review of official military documents. I put that on there as an in-depth review because official military documents is going to be more accurate than just, I wouldn't say more accurate, but it is going to be faster and just as accurate to look at a military document as opposed to sitting here and brainstorming back and forth until I finally come upon the right information. Because for me, getting correct information isn't a matter of just being able to whip it out of thin air. I have to be able to locate it in my own mind. So that takes time. So being able to do an in-depth look, by having those documents, it's going to help you because you're going to expend less time getting the correct information. You're going to be less worn out by the time you get the information if you have official military documents. That's just common knowledge. But it is a fact. It's an unfortunate fact about things when you're trying to do a review and you don't have the information. You can, for me, I'll be able to get the information, but it's going to take time. So that's why I put official military documents on there to be able to, in-depth for me is accuracy. And so having those documents is critical for the in-depth part. It ensures accuracy. It ensures in-depthness. I don't get sidetracked as I'm trying to think about my military career about something that happened the other day, and then I start talking about that. That's what these official military documents mean for in-depth. So that's why I put that on there. And then the last thing, delineating training versus real-life operations. So you got the timeline. I was in the military from here to here. From here to here, I served here. But getting closer to that, zooming into that is, well, from here to here, I did this type of work. I trained or I did a real-life operation. So, it sounds like it's kind of like a given, but it's when you're trying to do in-depth review, you have to get to that level of detail to be able to have the quality of workmanship that I'm looking for in something like this. So just again, an in-depth look into my military career requires a timeline, a review of official military documents, and delineating training versus real-life operations. In my eyes, if you don't do all of those, you're not going to have a in-depth look. Your in-depth look isn't going to be complete in my eyes. Do I have time to do a timeline? I don't really want to stress on that too much because what I'm trying to do is basically have a good starting point, and I think I got a good starting point for where to look at in my career, because I have a military career, but what type of information do you look at? When do you look at it? How do you look at it? Do you ever look at it? Are all important things. With Veterans Day coming up here on November 10th, it's important to have this information readily available because people are going to be talking about it when they're out with their families. They're going to be talking about their war stories and this and that. And do I want to be a person that talks about war stories, or do I want to take an in-depth look into my military career as an opportunity to re-solidify these things that I have to carry forward going into the future? Because for me, I'm not leaving my fate up to the big guy upstairs. I have to be able to know that I can retrieve the information that's critical in my life, that's my information, the things that I've done that relate to me, the things that interest me, the things that I want to do, the knowledge that I have is very important to me, and I have to be able to myself access the information, carry the information, convey the information, all of those things. That's my requirement. I ain't going forward in life unless I can do those things. Basically, I'll be at a standstill for as long as I have to until I have a good grasp, until I feel like I have a good grasp on those things. Otherwise, just like I'm doing right now, I'm reviewing this type of stuff. Any and everything I'm talking about, because it's a critical thing for my life, and what comes after my life, it's going to be important, because I don't know what comes after my life, but for me to be prepared, I have to infer what it means to be prepared for the unknown afterlife, and based on my knowledge and information, the knowledge that I have, having this information, your history, your career, things that interest you, being able to talk about that stuff is the utmost important to be able to begin that journey into what comes afterwards, to be able to make it through. Basically, making it through life requires skills and stuff like that. And I imagine that what comes after life here is going to require a certain level of skills. And, I think there are people out there, there are angels, there's people out, superheroes and stuff like that. But I want to be my own superhero, and I can be my own superhero, just like you can be your own superhero, and stand on solid ground next to your peer, next to you, next to your friend, next to you. And being self-sustaining is important to me. My military career represents a period of time where I was self-sustaining in my eyes. I had a income. I could afford my costs of living without relying on anybody else. So this represents my military career represents a period of time in my life where stability was there, as opposed to right now, stability isn't there. But I'm trying to find stability in other areas to compensate for not being able to put a roof over my head, not being able to purchase my own food. Because one thing I've learned, the capacity is there, but I don't always have the ability to execute whatever or to get whatever information. But if you're resourceful, you'll be able to compensate in other areas. And that's what I'm learning to do. That's what I'm doing here, trying to compensate for some of those shortcomings. And I think it's positive, because being able to do good things in the world is important, is a good thing, is going to be good overall. There's a lot of bad stuff going on, people killing people, hurting other people. So remembering your history, making a video on YouTube is good. That's something that's good. And so in my eyes, that's good. And, who's the chairman of Joint Chief Staff? General Joseph F. Dunford Jr. is the 19th, according to Google and Wikipedia. Joseph Dunford is the current chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. And Google provided that information. I have pictures and stuff that I can post online. I think the reason why I bring up the chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, is because it's basically a counter to what I'm doing. I'm remembering my stuff, and so it's important to kind of give back to the world when you can, when you're spending a lot of time and resources on yourself, such as I am, trying to figure out how do I make an in-depth look into my military career? Well, I'm giving back by knowing who the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff is. So that's why I'm doing that. And basically, I don't want my military career to end after the military either. So continuing it forward requires having the knowledge of the military, the United States military, possessing this knowledge. Somebody has to have the knowledge. And so I make the choice to have the knowledge in this particular case. For this particular knowledge, the Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, who is the number one advisor to the military advisor to the President of the United States. For me, I'm my own number one advisor. So if you look at me, I'm my own version of Joseph F. Dunford Jr. I am General Joseph F. Dunford Jr. To my own self, the President of the United States, me, Gabriel Flores. I advise myself on how to look at information. If I just want to, say, well, okay, I accept looking at my military career saying I was in the U.S. Navy. Well, that's not an in-depth look at my military career. As you just saw, as you just learned, Joseph F. Dunford Jr. says that an in-depth look into my military career requires a timeline review of official military documents and delineating training versus real-life operations. Anyways, guys, check in next time. I hope you gathered something from this. Until next time, see you later. Have a good day.